Hello and welcome. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator and this is the Fenix Airbus A319. And as it happens, I actually fly the A319 in the real world. So in this video I would really like to take a very close look at this aircraft to see how accurately they have modeled this. So if you expect me to just go through the aircraft, show you the graphics, the sound and everything, then I'm sorry, that's not what we're going to do. There are lots of other people that have already done that, and I mean, this is Fenix, we know they did a good job. No, this is what we're going to do. The airline I fly for operates the A320, the A320neo and the A319. And our base type is the Airbus A320, so that's what we all get trained on. Once the training is completed, we have to conduct a short difference course, which is essentially a home-based course that I have on my EFB, and that difference course tells us all the important differences between those three aircraft. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my EFB, I'm going to open up that course, and we'll compare the differences between the Fenix A320 and the Fenix A319 to the real A320 and the real A319 to see if all the small nuances that differentiate those two aircraft are actually accurately simulated. Now, before we get started, two things I would really like to get out of the way. First of all, the airline I fly for, as I said, operates the A320, A320neo, A319, so I'm not going to be talking about the Airbus A321 because that is an aircraft I'm not familiar with in the real world. And secondly, Fenix got me a bit by surprise by launching this so quickly. I was actually on holidays when this came out, so I haven't actually flown this aircraft at all in the sim. This is the first time I've loaded it in. It seems to be working fine, so we'll discover all these little details and how it all works together. Okay, so here we are. Now, out of the three aircraft I operate, I have to say my favorite would have to be the A320neo, which is just an absolutely amazing aircraft. But there's one thing about our A319s which is really cool. We have the IEA engines fitted to all our A319s, which actually makes this a very powerful aircraft. It feels like a little sports car. A lot of performance after takeoff. It's not unusual to get 4,500 feet per minute climb rate, even on a heavy aircraft, which is quite nice to have all that power. But all this comes with some disadvantages, and this is what I would like to try out now. As you can see, it is winter. We are at the beginning of a long taxiway, and this is a scenario I've seen in the real world many times, where we have icing conditions, so we need to switch on the engine anti-ice, and what happens is this will increase the N1, the idle N1 of this engine, and the IAE engines, actually the idle speed is already quite high, but with this it gives you a lot of power even with the engines in idle. And the problem we often face is that in the winter time we don't have that many passengers as we have in the summer, so the aircraft is light, and if we have a long taxi we constantly have to use the brakes, and it is not unusual that in the winter time we end up at the end of the runway with hot brakes and actually have to delay the takeoff because the engines are just pushing so hard. I often think it must be weird for people that fly a lot with us, that in the summertime when we don't use engine anti-ice we never seem to have a problem with taking off, whilst in the winter time we often have to tell them that we're gonna have to wait a few minutes to wait for the brakes to cool down, and all that when outside it's like -5 degrees or something. Must seem strange, but that's just one of those technical quirks of this aircraft. So what I'm expecting now is when I release the parking brake, I should not require any power. This aircraft should just speed off, and we will need a lot of braking to keep the speed below the maximum, which in these conditions at my airline would be 10 knots, which is not a lot. So, well, let's have a go. So we release the parking brake. Yes, and the aircraft starts moving, and this is exactly what I expect from the real aircraft. The 320 will do that if it's very light, but a very heavy A320, ours can seat 180 passengers, will usually require a bit of power to start moving. The Neo is a bit more powerful, but same story. It's not as quick off the mark as this A319 here. So that's very good. This feels exactly like the real aircraft. It just starts moving. You don't have to do anything. And let's have a look. Brake temperatures right now are 25 degrees. And I'll see you at the end of the runway. Okay, and here we are at the end of the runway. And if we look, the brake temperature is now at 60 or 55 degrees. Now in this scenario, no problem. But in the real world, we often have very short turnaround times of only 30-35 minutes. And if you already arrive at the gate with hot brakes, something around 100-120 degrees, and then you add the difference here, you could see that you end up with hot brakes at the beginning of the runway. So that's simulated correctly. Very nice to see. And now we're going to go to another quirk of this aircraft. And yeah, let's see if it's there. Okay, we have now jumped into the A320 series, and the scenario we're in is that we are on autopilot. We're cruising at flight level 120, and ATC has just given us a descent down to 3,000 feet, and they want us to go down fairly quickly. So we'll go into open descent, thrust idle, and we're gonna pull the speed brake full. However, in this scenario, the aircraft is only going to give us half speed brake. So if you look outside, you can see that's the maximum speed brake we will get. Half speed brake deflection. Very important to know when you fly the A320. It's a bit of a quirk of the aircraft, and it can catch you out if you are a bit too high and too fast. Okay, and here we are back in the A319, exact same scenario as before. We're at flight level 120 and we'll be going down to 3,000 feet. Open descent, thrust idle, and full speed brakes. And if we go outside, you can see the aircraft should give us full speed brakes. Hard to tell, but I guess this is correctly modeled. Let's have a look. If we go to flight controls, yes, they are fully extended. Hard to see actually from the outside. I thought it'd be more noticeable, but you can see the outer ones are more extended than the inner ones. So good to remember, A319 will give you full speed brakes in this scenario. A320 will only give you half speed brakes. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Okay, another scenario where young pilots sometimes get caught out. We are about to join an ILS here in Vienna, runway 16. We are already cleared for the ILS. As you can see, we have a Lock Blue, Cat 3 Dual, Autopilot 1 and 2, Glide Slope Blue as well, although for whatever reason the glide slope is not indicated yet. With flaps 1, 210 knots. Now we have Lock Star. And we are in icing conditions, which means the engine anti-ice is switched on. Again, the idle N1 has been increased by the aircraft to provide enough bleed air for the engine anti-ice system. So what this means is it's actually going to be very difficult to slow down this aircraft. So what sometimes happens is pilots will fly this like a heavy A320 and just wait till the aircraft catches the glide slope and then reduce the speed, but nothing will happen. At least that's what I expect. So we are 210 knots, which is a bit sporty to be fair, but let's just say at this point we decide to go back to 190. Glide slope star. The aircraft should start its descent. Excellent. Okay, we are now nicely established on the ILS. Aircraft going down, following the ILS guidance, and now ATC tells us to reduce speed. So let's go back to 160. And as you can see, nothing happens. The aircraft is unable at this point to reduce speed. If you're really unlucky, you are above VFE next for flaps 2. In our case, it's not a problem. We would just extend flaps 2, which creates quite a bit of drag. But if you're above that, then you have to basically use the gear. At these speeds, the speed brakes, I mean, they work, but it's not pretty. You're quite low, and they're not very effective at such low speed. So in my company, the guidance is put the gear down. The call out would be non-standard gear down, because we're at flaps 1, and then usually that does the trick. But nice to see, it's actually modeled correctly. The aircraft is barely slowing down, which is exactly how the real aircraft behaves. Very good, very good. Okay, we are safely back on the ground. And I mean, the document I have in front of me here on my EFB is very long. There's a lot of very technical stuff, like the maximum and minimum oil quantity, the amount of oil the amount of oil the aircraft uses per hour, things like that, that I think go a bit beyond what we want to do in this video. But just a few things. Our A319s, for example, do not have the expedite button. This seems to be modeled here, but this could be very aircraft specific. This is correct. There is a additional cockpit door backup system, which we don't have on the A320, but it's here, so that's nice to see. Our A319s also have a fuel panel back here, which is super cool because it allows us to actually select the fuel we want. So the fuel truck, when it attaches to the aircraft, already knows how much fuel we require. We don't have this on any other aircraft apart from the A319. It's missing here, but again, this could be airline specific. The weather radar is exactly the same that we have on the A319. We have 4 different weather radar systems within the company. So this is exactly what I'm used to on this aircraft, which is very cool. And if we look at the overhead panel, the manual start selector are actually different to the CFM engine, and this is correct. There are 4 buttons instead of 2, so that's all done correctly. Well, and then there's a whole bunch of other things in our documentation which I don't think there's much point in going through. For example, on these engine types, there is a procedure for maximum flex temperature during the winter period. Yeah, so this, I think the rest of what I can see here in my documentation goes beyond what flight simmers need to know and would really care about. The main points I think we've discussed. It has mostly to do with the engines and how they behave, how the aircraft behaves with the speed brakes, and a few other small things which are all present and correct. So from my point of view, what I can tell you, this really feels like an A319. Now, in the making of this video, I've done some takeoffs. I haven't done the landing yet. I will do that shortly, but so far I'm very impressed. This is a really lovely aircraft, and yeah, it really captures what it is like to fly an Airbus A319. So good job once again. I will be trying the A321, even though I can't really compare it to anything in the real world, but doesn't matter. I trust Fenix enough so that I can sort of get a feel for the aircraft and imagine what it would be like to fly it in the real world. Okay, and that is the end of the video. Just a few pointers, they're all there, present and correct. I'm really happy about this. Thanks to Fenix for creating such an amazing add-on, and I hope to see more Fenix Airbuses in the near future. Well, I hope you found this video useful, and I look forward to seeing you again in the near future and in the next one. Until then, all the best. Bye bye.